This is my Glock pistol. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Folks, it's Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalists. That's from a scene from the movie Full Metal Jacket, although they were talking about their rifle, not their Glock, but this is the Modern Survivalist, and for the Modern Survivalist, your handgun is your rifle. Your handgun is your main gun. And if you know what you're doing, that gun is going to be a Glock pistol. And I know everyone out there that thinks different is going to be crying out loud, saying, oh no, my SIG, my HK, my whatever is as good or better. And that's simply not true. The thing is this. The Glock is the most proven handgun in the world. There's no other handgun that has its track record, its when everything is said and done and every aspect of the gun is, you know, the capacity, the weight, the ease of shooting, the accuracy, the reliability, which is top notch in the Glock, extremely important. Even the ergonomics, which are sometimes criticized, but you know, there's nothing wrong with them, and certainly not with the last generation of Glocks that are even a little bit smaller in the grip. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the Glock. It's the gun that you should have. 9mm and the Glock 17. Some people like the Glock 19, which is slightly smaller. I'm personally a big fan of the Glock 31 and 357 SIG, but if you're going to be having just one, it should be a 9mm, and it should be, in my opinion, the Glock 17. There's really nothing wrong with it. It has just the perfect size for a good solid grip with both hands, good enough length of barrel. I mean, for years the 1911 was king of the hill, and at one time the 1911 was the most proven handgun in the world as well. But we're talking about 1911, back in over 100 years ago, right? There was a time when automatics were first being introduced, and law enforcement and military were extremely resilient about the idea of an automatic, which in their mind was not as reliable. Well, of course, it turned out that automatics are actually more reliable than handguns. The only thing that than the revolver, I mean, and the only thing that the revolver is more simple at is its user interface, where basically you load the cylinder and there's no safety. You just pull the trigger. There's no empty chamber, no safety, none of that. Well, some of that is actually found in the Glock as well. There's no external safety other than the safety in the trigger, but there's no safety to be forgotten, and you know, end up getting someone killed in the confusion. You know, training will of course go a very long way in avoiding something like that, but I think that the more simple it is, the better your gun. And I mean, I've been shooting for many years. I've been shooting for over 2 decades now. I started shooting when I was, but by this I mean I started shooting seriously, as in, you know, serious defensive shooting training when I was 15 years old. I was very lucky in that regard. I was living in this place where, fortunately enough, at least for me, a couple of former military guys had this dream of opening a range, and they did that. They opened a very nice range, state-of-the-art indoors range with moving targets, everything. It was actually quite ahead of its time, and it was fantastic. I mean, but the guys had opened the range, and there was very little people going there. In fact, it was me and these 2 guys, so it was 2 instructors for 1 student, and that was fantastic for me. I learned a lot. I learned they had different firearms. I spent 3 months there learning how to shoot them, and always oriented mostly towards, well, entirely actually, to defensive shooting. That was the thing that they taught, what they knew. So one of the things that I quickly learned to appreciate is training, how important that is, and how much of a waste of time just going to a range and firing a couple boxes of ammunition is. Folks, if you're watching this and never took an actual defensive shooting class from a qualified instructor, it's just a waste of time. Whatever it is that you're doing, it you think is as good, or you think you're practicing on your own and you never took a single class, you're just wasting money, wasting ammunition, wasting, worst of all, maybe your time. It's a big waste of time. Once you get into this, and I've lost count how many classes I've taken from different instructors, beginners classes, intermediate ones, more advanced ones, close quarter combat classes, hand-to-hand fighting, with knife, with weapon, without weapon, with both things, indoor shooting, tactical shooting, shooting in groups, shooting in pairs, shooting in and around vehicles. As time goes by, and of course as money allows as well, but that's what you should be doing, because once you start thinking like that, every round you're firing, you're going to be thinking of practicing what you learn, practicing those skills. If you've never done that, then you just don't understand what I'm talking about here. The great thing about the Glock pistol, besides being the most proven handgun in the world right now, no other handgun has its track record of reliability, of being used in as many forces with such success as the Glock pistol. Anyone that thinks different is simply wrong. And I'm not afraid to say so, because I actually know what I'm talking about. So yeah, you may like this or that other gun, better in your opinion. I hear very often, it just doesn't fit my hand well. That's bullshit. You should overcome that by shooting more, training more. I actually have a very good friend of mine that was a die-hard 1911 fan. The guy wouldn't, and he was, if you're watching this, buddy, I'm talking about you. He's former, he's a Marine recon, so it's a guy that has a lot of training. But for years, he would resist the idea of even considering the Glock pistol, until finally, being the smart guy that he is, he understood that his own personal preferences could not overcome the logic of this simply being a superior weapon. And certainly compared to a 1911. Now the thing is, many guns look like the Glock. Well, yeah, you're more like it. This is the kind of gun that's becoming a little bit more extinct with a decocker, safety, and whatnot. And more guns are looking like this. This Beretta, which is almost like a copy of the Glock. So that's basically the trend that's going on for the last few years, and it's just gonna be becoming even more common. All guns looking like the Glock, and it just makes life easier. Not only is it a great, extremely proven firearm, one of the things I've learned to appreciate is that because of its commonality, because it's so common pretty much anywhere that you go, you are likely to have in front of you a Glock pistol whenever you're looking for a good firearm. If you go to a gun shop anywhere, if you go to a gun club anywhere. I mean, when I first went to Northern Ireland and I went to a gun range over there, obviously enough, the gun that they handed me over, that they had as a for loaning clients and such, was a Glock pistol. They had a couple 17s, I think, like a Glock in 40 Smith & Wesson, but basically it's always going to be Glocks. With armed forces even, it's very common to come across Glock pistols or guns that are extremely like it, and that makes things easier for you, because if you trained and learned on a Glock, then any other Glock is basically going to be the same thing. I went to that gun range, they handed me the Glock, that Glock that they had there for renting, for borrowing. I went to the range and boom, 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 shot a few rounds, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Well, it was quite embarrassing actually, because I came across a couple guys that had learned a little bit about me, had heard an interview that I did with Jack Spirko from the Survival podcast, and out of pure coincidence, we came across, and they were shooting for the first time, and I was all trying to teach them how to shoot, and they couldn't hit anything. And it turns out that I disassembled the gun, that I couldn't hit anything with, looked in there, and it was full of lead and gunk and crap. It was awful. It was so dirty that, I mean, at first I was embarrassed because I couldn't hit anything. Then when I looked into the barrel, I was actually concerned because you could not see anything but the crap stuck all along the barrel. And I went to the guy in the store and said, dude, this Glock hasn't been cleaned in I don't know how long. I've never seen a gun this dirty. This barrel is just waiting to blow up. And the guy, you know what he said? He said, well, Glock pistols don't need to be cleaned. You know, it just goes to show that some people, you know, even if behind the counter in a gun store, many times they just don't know what they're talking about. That's one of the nice things. Anywhere you go, you're going to be finding, chances are you're going to be finding a Glock pistol. If you leave that Glock of yours behind and you go anywhere else, chances are the one you're going to be buying next, the one that's going to be more easily available, is going to be a Glock pistol. Like in this case, this gun is pretty much new to me. And, you know, in spite of this gun being new to me and having, I don't know, less than 1,000 rounds so far, this is the same gun that I used just a few days ago to win an IPSC SC competition here locally. Ended up in first place, so really not bad. That goes to show that you don't need the latest $1,000 SIG. I mean, guys they're shooting, many of them police officers, many of them people that had shot you know, for many years and either shoot in law enforcement or military or shoot for sport. Many of them had, I mean, I think that all of them had guns more expensive than mine. They had their tank folios, their custom, well, not custom because I was shooting production, but lots of those expensive SIG. I think the X5 is it? I don't know. But, you know, people think that the Glock is just not good enough. Well, I ended up in first place, so it shouldn't be that awful. In terms of accuracy, you know, of combat accuracy, it's more than enough. It's more accurate than you'll ever be. That's simply the truth about it. Now, is the Glock perfect? Well, no, it isn't. In fact, the first time I bought this gun, I picked it up brand new out of the box. They opened the box in front of me, so I picked it up, you know, just like any other Glock pistol. Look at this sight, and it was those plastic sight, and there was like 1 millimeter to the right. And I knew that was no good. I took a few shots with it and immediately asked for one of the adjustment tools who has to correct that, but it was almost 1 millimeter to one of the sides, and that's not enough even for close range shooting. That's the only thing that I can tell that sucks about a Glock pistol. You need, if you have those original plastic sights, you need to replace them with you know, go for night sights, but more important, go for sights that have a square shape there in the back. One little secret: whenever I see anyone saying they conceal carry or keep a gun for defense, and they don't have a sight that has this shape, especially those that have like a little ramp there, I think the Novak ones have it at the time. Whenever I see that, I immediately lose like 50% of respect for that guy's opinion in terms of self-defense and especially weapons. You need that square shape right there. One of the things you end up doing a lot in training, in defensive shooting training, is doing this, racking the slide in your belt, because what you do is practice reloading and clearing malfunctions single-handed, your right hand, left hand, and when one of your hands is not functioning, not working anymore, you use your belt, your clothes, a table, a wall, anything that you can, so as to actually rack the slide single-handed. And for that, this square shape here is crucial. Plastic sights have this shape, but they're plastic, and they actually, happens a lot that they fall out of the gun because they're plastic, and with enough force you can pop them out of the slide. I've seen it happen myself, nothing that I've been told, stuff that I've seen. So yeah, that would be one of the things that you realize. You know, again, you cannot replace training, guys. You actually have to go and take those classes. Now, one of the things that you practice a lot, and you see this a lot on YouTube, guys, doing this, because dry firing is crucial. And you see this, and this is wrong, because this isn't what you should be practicing. What you should be practicing is this: the reset of your trigger. This is what you should be practicing like 90% of the time. And when you're taking a good defensive shooting class, one of the things that you will see is that you'll stand there with a guy next to you, and one of the guys will be right next to you doing this, and you will be shooting it like that, dry firing. This is very important because slapping the trigger and lack of good control there is what causes you to miss most often than anything. Even slight alignment most of the time. And once you have a good stance, a good grip on your gun, and you know, once you practice enough to know what you're doing, you realize that you quickly come to this point, and you don't have to focus that much on actually your sights. You have to focus more on not screwing up this, not doing this, because that's slapping the trigger like that. That's when you miss. When you do that, you have to focus on this. So trigger reset. Right? This is what you should be practicing all day long. Of course, be extremely careful, because many times when dry firing, you forget about the loaded weapon, and you know, bad stuff happens. But that is what you practice the most. Actually, one of the things that you hear and see is a guy just, you know, practicing this, putting a round there, and you have to break it without dropping it, like I just did right now. And with enough time, with enough practice, you do get to that point, you know, where you can even do this, you know, loading it on the side without dropping it. But that's your bread and butter as a gun shooter. It's the thing that you should practice the most, just breaking the trigger like so. That's basically gonna be all, guys, for now. Just want to emphasize a few of those points that often go unsaid. I'm sure some of you already know all of this, but many people just don't fully understand how important it is to be very, very good with your handgun. And it's entirely possible if you put your time, if you practice a lot, if you complement those training sessions, those defensive shooting training sessions with practical shooting, which, yes, it's a sport, but it's a sport in which you can practice a lot of what you learn in those classes. I know that's what I do. Now, it's up to you to decide if you want to be winning, if you want to be focusing on winning. Winning is always nice, right? It's always nice, and you can actually win. And end up in first place like I did with your production gun, even when you're focusing mostly on just practicing those skills. But it's up to you to decide if you're going to be carrying a gun for concealed carry, a little pocket pistol, and using a big 6-hour or tank folio for your IPSC so as to win, because that's what matters the most for you. Or if you're going to be using the same gun, you should be using the same gun. If you're going to be using the same holster, belt, gear, clothes that you use on the street in competition, that's something that's going to be working in your favor for developing those defensive shooting skills. If you have a different set of gear, so as to give you a little bit of an edge in competition, because that's what matters the most to you, yeah, that's perfect. That's fine. It's not ideal for, you know, improving your defensive shooting skills, though. That's, at least here in this channel, that's what matters to us the most. Folks, Glock pistol. That's all there is to be said about it. Learn your manual as well. That's important. I'm going to be doing a separate video about the basics of the Glock pistol for those of you that are either new shooters or maybe never even held one of these guns, so as we have a little bit more information in case one day you actually just have to do just that. Folks, it's going to be all for now. Remember to subscribe, thumbs up if you like the video, share, subscribe to the channel. Take care. See you in our next video.